Well, welcome back. South Africa as a country, we're continuing to battle poor water quality, and it's often blamed on aging infrastructure, and there's reason for that. The 2023 Blue Water Drop Report shows there's been a steady decline in the quality of our drinking water. Not only that, the state of wastewater treatment facilities does reflect a broader challenge. Remember, a few weeks ago, we were up in Hammanskraal talking about the cholera issue there, and it doesn't seem to be any end to that particular problem. And it's 2023. How are we still here? Well, joining us, a water expert and always a popular guest when it comes to water issues, and former Water Affairs DG as well, making time for me, Professor Mike Muller. Prof. Muller, good to have you back on ENCA. So I'd like to start with this first. How bad is our water quality in our country? We'll talk infrastructure in a moment, but just if you had to just sum it up for me, how bad are we and where should we be?
Good morning to you, Gareth, and to your viewers. How bad is the quality? As always, it depends where you are. If you're sitting in one of the bigger cities, our quality is pretty good still, unless you happen to be in part of the municipality where there's been a problem and they've got a hole in the road and a whole lot of mud has got into the pipes. So I'd say the cities are still reasonably good. As you go into the smaller areas, as you go into the rural areas, it gets less and less effective. But that's talking about the water for drinking purposes. And, that I think is the first thing we need to worry about. Can we safely drink the water that comes out of the tap when it comes out of the tap? In the cities, yes. As you go further out, better think about it.
Yeah, I think you need to give a lot of thought, especially when you start getting to areas like Hammanskraal and those wastewater treatment plants. If we have the time, we'll talk about wastewater as well, Prof. But aging infrastructure, it seems to be a bit of an aging argument at this point. It gets thrown out there very easily as well. But when we talk about aging infrastructure, what are we talking about? Are we talking 5 years, 10 years, 20 years? How often does this infrastructure need to be replaced, or how often does it need to be maintained? And how bad are we at doing that?
Gareth, I think aging infrastructure is one of those political slogans that you hear and you know that it actually doesn't have very much meaning. Let me give you one important figure. In 1994, there was infrastructure for 24 million people in South Africa to have drinking water. In 2022, there was infrastructure for 54 million people to have drinking water. So the real challenge has been the expansion of the infrastructure. And I have to say the continued expansion. We've got to supply 1 million more people every year. And quite frankly, we are not keeping up is the problem, rather than that the infrastructure is aging. You know, a pipe properly laid and properly looked after can last for 50, 60, 70 years. If you don't look after it, if you dig up the road and there's a leak and you don't fix it properly, it'll be breaking open every couple of months, as we well know from our experience. But the problem is not aging infrastructure. The problem is keeping up with the population growth and now maintaining that water infrastructure for 54 million people, which is 30 million more than in 1994. It's a real challenge, and most of the municipalities are struggling, and many of them are just failing to keep up.
Is that an administrative issue or a money issue, Prof?
It is the combination. We know we have plenty of municipalities that really haven't been doing a good job in any respect. And of course, water is one of those. If they don't maintain it, if they don't bill people so that they don't use too much and deprive people down the pipe, if they don't collect the money that they bill, all of those become a problem. Really, what we're talking about is a challenge of municipal capacity, and then the big problem, the Constitution says municipalities are responsible for water. If they continually and systematically fail, what do we do next? And I think that's the big challenge that's facing us. No point throwing too much money until you fix the management, and you can't fix the management if the municipalities aren't prepared to get themselves organized and do the job properly.
One of the options we have in our viewer question this morning, Prof, is, and the only reason I put it there is because I often hear that there should be a combination of the private and the public sector. One other argument is to privatize the water infrastructure completely. There's our viewer question on air for those who weren't with us earlier. And one of the other options is actually get water experts into government, not use them on the sideline, not use them as advisors and then ignore what they say, but actually get them into positions of power within municipality. What would you make about private-public partnerships or privatizing water and experts working as government officials?
Gareth, some time ago, let me just put it that way, sort of the beginning of the 21st century, there was a lot of talk across the world about trying to privatize water. The point is, because water is such an essential product, because it's actually a human right, in South Africa and lots of other places, it's quite difficult for private companies to operate in the space, because if a customer doesn't pay for a phone, you cut the phone off. If a customer doesn't pay for water, you're not allowed to cut them off. If they don't pay, how do you get your money back? And we've seen a complete loss of appetite in the private sector for getting involved at a large scale in the water business. We can use the private sector, and we do use it much more effectively to do specific jobs. At the moment, in Lesotho, admittedly, but it's being paid for by us, the Potihadi Dam is being built. They just closed the dam wall, the temporary dam, and that's all being done by private sector, and that's excellent. But when it comes to running the waterworks, collecting the money, maintaining that infrastructure network, it's probably going to stay in the public sector, although a lot of the work might be contracted out. But to do that, we've got to allow the technical people to do their job properly. And really, I think we should. You've missed the question there. Are politicians the problem? And I think what we're finding is that the trouble is that the politicians aren't willing to appoint competent people and then to support them to do the job. Too often, they want to interfere. They want to decide who gets which contract. They want to decide what kind of project gets built. And if the politicians aren't prepared to let the experts do the job, then the politicians must take full responsibility. I think we're seeing a move to allow greater professionalization, handing over the responsibility to technical people. But, it's a long struggle, and a lot of the people in municipalities who have the power are very reluctant to give it up. It's valuable to them in all sorts of ways.
Yeah, Prof, absolutely, and I agree with you completely. Professor Mike Muller, perhaps that should have been an option 4 on our viewer question this morning, the interference of politicians when it comes to water infrastructure. It's a good point. Water expert, Professor Mike Muller, making a very good point, and also giving us plenty to think about why we are where we are, water infrastructure-wise. My thanks to the good Prof for making time this morning.